Hey, and thanks for joining us for today's webcast, your guide to unique niches, where we'll be talking about how retailers can set themselves apart from the competition by adding some creative categories in their stores. My name is Amanda Bell, an editor with NRHA and Hardware Retailing Magazine. It's my pleasure to be here today to introduce you to the first webcast of 2013. As always, if you have any questions or would like a copy of this presentation, feel free to contact me at amandaj@nrha.org, and I'd be happy to share it with you. And I always enjoy getting your feedback, so if you have any responses or questions or anything, I'm always glad to hear from you. Of course, this webcast, as with any other webcast that NRHA produces, is sponsored by NRHA, the Association for Independent Hardware Stores, Lumber Yards, and Home Centers in the U.S. and Canada, Hardware Retailing Magazine, your voice for the industry, and NRHA's vendor partners who make this webcast possible, as well as all the great content you read on nrha.org and Hardware Retailing Magazine. For more information on them, you can, of course, always visit them on our website, which is nrha.org. As I mentioned earlier today, this webcast is about unique niches, what you as retailers can do to make the most out of selling in an out-of-the-box category. With the current retail climate and the economy, the competition for customers' attention is really intense right now. So what can you do to make sure they're buying at your store? One way to do that is to think outside the box. When you get away from how you can beat the competition in traditional categories and instead focusing on a unique void that you can fill in the local marketplace, you can quickly become the go-to destination for an off-the-wall or a hard-to-find item. We'll look at some examples of retailers I've talked to in putting together this webcast and share some of their advice with you and just see what works for their stores and how they're selling their unique niches. Niches are about want, not need. This is where you can think outside the hardware store mentality. You sell goods and offer services that people need for home improvement or construction products, but that doesn't mean that you can't also sell organic bath products, birdhouses, and nostalgic items. That's what this first retailer that we're going to take a look at has done, and his store has since become a place-to-see destination in his community as decided by his local media outlets. In his advice, you'll also see throughout the webcast that we have quotes directly from some of the retailers we have talked to. His first advice, his name's Wade Allen. He is the owner of Hall's Hardware in Milton, Florida. He says niches require constant change and keeping it new and different. And he's definitely done this in his store. He even has a store within a store concept called Birdville. So wild bird is a big category for him. He's also kind of cornered the market on gourmet cookware, organic bath products, Army and Navy surplus items, wind chimes, nostalgic items. Really anything and everything that you could find in a general store. Which he says has just drastically increased his customer base. Because he's in Florida, he has a really big tourist base, so anything that can set him apart from the competition or just to get some tourists into his store for something to do while they're on vacation has been a big draw for him. He also is really aware of the fact that women are making a lot of the purchasing decisions for home improvement projects. So just having some niches in his store that are kind of focused on them kind of makes them want to stay in the store longer and then maybe go over to some of the other categories in the store and purchase other things as well. How did he kind of become this place to see? Well, he started by branding his store as a destination. And as a result, we talked about how his store took on more of a general store feel. And to also kind of cater to the kids that are coming along with the parents to the store. He also carries some pretty obscure items that we haven't really found anywhere else in any other stores. So it's a really big talking point for people in his community. Because niches typically include specialty or hard to find items, they help you in a number of different ways, including customer traffic, driving customer traffic, which we've seen with Wade Allen, that he's done that in his store, as well as adding some high margin items to his product mix. Another thing that Allen has kind of kept in mind is in starting new niches is just being flexible and open to change. If a customer suggests an off-the-wall item, maybe it's worth looking into. Some things, like you can see here on the slide, nostalgic sodas and bath items do really well in his store, just because he's asked customers what they wanted, and that's sort of what they told him. This next tip fits with kind of what we've been talking about in the first tip. Don't be afraid to tap into unlikely resources. Often when we ask retailers where they go to get their ideas for some unique niches, a lot of times they tell us a customer came to them with the idea, or they saw the idea on TV, or their daughter or a friend or family member suggested something off the wall, and they just went for it. So be open to those outlandish niches and who you go to for ideas, because it's often the crazy ideas that will yield the best returns for you. One example of a store that has tapped into some unlikely resources is L&M Pro Lumber in Emporium, Pennsylvania. The owners, Mike and Linda Songer, took that philosophy when they were deciding what to carry in their store, but in a more practical way. Because their store is in Cameron County, it's the least populous county in Pennsylvania, they knew it was vital to understand and anticipate the diverse needs of their customers. Because the next big box and department store is miles outside of the town, they really took advantage of where there were some missed opportunities in the town to bring in items that their customers would need but weren't typically found in a hardware store. So when the local flooring shop shut down, they built their own flooring department with entirely Pennsylvania sourced flooring supplies. So not only are they tapping into a niche, they're also supporting the local community, which we'll be talking about later. But to get these ideas for niches in their store, they really just reached out to their customers, both in the store and on their website. They did a really good job with including a survey on their website, just asking customers what they would like to see in the store. And pretty much what Mike said, when you can read here what he says on the slide. When people start coming through the door and more than one person asks for an item, we see a need and look into carrying it. So you can see that clearly with the flooring department and also with their mobile home hardware section of the store. They're also really big into camping supplies. Hunting is a big hobby in that area. So really just tapping into and taking the time to find out what your customers want is always a good way to ensure success in bringing in a new niche. Also, another tip would be to not be afraid to seize an opportunity when one opens in the market. Like we said, not all niches necessarily need to be quirky to be good for business. If there's a void in the community, why not bring in something practical? When you become the go-to source for something that's hard to find, customers will be more likely to browse your other offerings too. For example, here you can see the town source of propane shut down, and they're in Pennsylvania, so they have a lot of access to coal. So to save customers the trip, they invested in bringing both of those items into the community. But it's also, whatever niche you bring in, it's important for you to do some research and see if there's any untapped potential for you to drive in more customers to your store. You can do this like what the Songers did. You can create surveys and just to talk to your customers when they're checking out. Say, what are some things that are missing, or what are some things that you want, or some products that you're talking about or seeing that you would like us to incorporate into your store. And maybe it might be worth considering if more than one person asks for it. This next step requires you to have some patience. Just because you see a void in the community for a certain niche, or you're bringing in those want items, like we mentioned earlier, it may take some time for your customers to know that you even carry a unique niche. This is where, again, like we said, tapping into social media channels and getting creative with your promotions and your advertising and circulars can work to your advantage. So for 2 retailers in Georgia, the risk of bringing in some new niches and spending some less time on more traditional departments really paid off in a big way. In fact, their store is now known for carrying outlandish items, and they've been named by Ace last year as one of the coolest hardware stores in the country. This next store that we're looking at is In Town Ace Hardware, and it is located in Decatur, Georgia. It's owned by Tony Powers and Dave Jones, and when they noticed that some big boxes were opening up around town, they decided it was time to branch out into something new that the big boxes didn't offer. So instead of putting their focus on lumber, they decided to branch out into some unique niches. Some of those, as you can see, we have some barbecue rubs and sauces. They have over 90 varieties of those, as well as a kids' art supply section, bath salts, which we'll see on the next slide, perfumes, greeting cards. They really just kind of really embraced having some unique niches, and in turn their customers have taken notice. What Tony Powers says, the co-owner, if you see a niche you like, don't be afraid to sample it in your store. But if you, so just along with just being brave and trying something new, you really should set a period of time to measure if the niche is going to be successful, and then can just kind of reevaluate it from that time. If it's not as big of a hit as you thought, maybe it just isn't a good fit, and it's time to move on from that and maybe try something else. But also keep in mind that some niches do take a long time to take hold until you get your promotions set up just right. So just kind of keep that in mind too. And also just to do your research as well, and being patient with that, and talk to vendors and other dealers at trade shows to see if they've done something similar and what works and what doesn't work in certain areas. In fact, In Town Ace works with about 300 and 400 housewares and giftwares vendors. They sometimes source as maybe few as 3 items from each. So just maintaining those vendor relationships when you're bringing in a niche can be really important to just know about all the products that you are carrying in your niche categories. Another thing that this store does really well is their merchandising. They've dedicated prime real estate a couple of years ago in merchandising their niche items and swapping those out regularly in the power aisles, and just giving it some nice antique racking really makes it stand out and makes customers want to spend some time there. And they're also not afraid to tell their customers about those unique items. They rely a lot on word of mouth and social media for their advertising. And they also have a marquee sign, which I know a lot of retailers have these similar kinds of signs, whether they're digital or you can put the letters on manually. But they include some of the more recent unique items that they feature in the store on the sign. And it's just become something that the community members who drive by look forward to, just to see what's new, and they'll quite often just pop in the store just to check it out. Another tip along the lines of merchandising is just offsetting a special area in your store just for those niches. This allows customers to take their time and enjoy themselves. After all, that's what a unique niche is all about, is something that you want to spend time looking at. If you don't have the space in your store to do this, you can always just consider having a virtual space. Just think of your website as an extension of your store, and include some of your niche items on there as well. But no matter where you have that space for your niches, it should be clean and inviting and really make people want to browse and take their time. If your website is really cluttered and the links don't work, then it's really not going to make your customers want to spend time on the website. The same goes for your store. If things are in disarray and it just doesn't really look inviting, or it's cluttered, customers aren't going to want to spend time to look at it, even if it's the most interesting niche or item that you have in your store. So just make sure you remember that presentation of niches is key in order to make them sell well. This next store is SOS Survival Products. They do merchandising really well. And the owner, Jeff Edelstein, specializes in emergency preparedness supplies. And his store is not really that big. It's only about 1,500 square feet of retail space. So he has to get really creative with how he merchandises his store. So he does that by talking with his supplier, and they help him set up a display that is inviting for his customers, and really makes customers want to spend time and look around there. Like you said, on this quote that we have here, the way we have designed our store is like a kid in a candy store. People spend a couple hours here just looking around. And that's really what you want your goal to be when you bring in merchandising for niches in your store. With more than 4,000 items and only 1,500 square feet of space, this store has done a really good job of just creating a nice environment. In addition, we've also talked about a little bit about just getting the word out for your niche. This store also does a great job with that. There are some things that you could maybe keep in mind for when you include a new niche in your store. He sends out brochures and catalogs to current and prospective customers, and just also offers free classes on emergency preparedness, pet preparedness for emergencies, really just kind of creating some niche workshops and events is another way that you can really tap into that market of niches. We're now going to take a look at a store that has literally taken the housewares niche to the next level. Woodstock Do It Best Hardware owner Vince Christofora created Diane's Kitchen, a 750 square foot cookware store within a store, and his 6,000 square foot store with 2 stories. And his merchandise luxury housewares niches around it. everything from naturally and locally made bath products to candles, fishing supplies. He even has a maple syrup supplies niche seasonally. So we visited his store recently to see kind of what made his store's niches stand out and why customers have really just flocked to his store for their luxury housewares needs. So let's listen to what he has to say about his store's unique niches.
My name is Vince Christopher, and I'm the owner of Woodstock Do It Best Hardware. The store is about 6,000 square feet, 2 floors, and our housewares and our gourmet kitchen shop, Diane's Kitchen, is on the 2nd floor. Sure. Well, Diane's Kitchen is the name we gave our kitchen shop. It was a niche we developed so that we could expand our business, and we focus on bringing kitchenwares and housewares to the community. We try to promote and market the kitchen store as a place where people want to come that enjoy to cook or want to learn how to cook, or what we call just share the passion and the technology. So we try to make it a fun place where people can come and see what's new, the newest gadget in the magazine that they saw, or whatever personality is using it on TV, on the cooking channel, and know they can find it here. And we try to extend that through our email, our monthly email newsletters, where we let people know new products that have arrived, or a product we may feature for that month that's new. We also have a bathroom shop, our bathroom niche, which we created by taking the standard products that a hardware store carries in a bathroom, like toilet paper dispensers and towel rod holders and things like that, and incorporated a few of the new vendors that carried bath products, and brought in things like more current designs for shower curtains and things like that, and vanity supplies, and then found some specialty companies that sold things like handmade soaps, or something that was a little bit different than you might find somewhere else. Well, we definitely like to have more room, but we don't. So we have to look for creative ways to display stuff, creative ways to create a look so that it doesn't look, the housewares doesn't look like a hardware store. People expect a different look than gray or tan shelves, and sometimes you can't display as many items as you'd like to, but you work it in and you use every inch you have. We try to make sure that downstairs, inside the front door, that we keep an active end cap where we refresh it periodically, actually quite often, to get people's attention. And we also try to usually keep some kind of unique or most popular item right at the point of sale next to the register, so when people are checking out and they like to touch and look at stuff and they go, what's this pepper grinder here? And that allows us to introduce the kitchen shop to them if they don't know about it. The department's growing, and we hope it'll continue to grow, and plan on letting it grow, which is going to create some space problems, but we'll continuously look to condense other areas that aren't selling as quickly and expand it.
That was Vince Christofora in Woodstock, New York, and Woodstock Do It Best Hardware, talking about his store's unique housewares niches. And we're now going to move on to our next tip, which is getting creative with your price shopping. Yeah, so you found a niche you're interested in bringing into your store. You've looked into merchandising it and advertising it, but how do you price it? Well, this next retailer's advice is to get creative with your price shopping. Old School Hardware in Washington, D.C. has a bike supplies niche in their store, and instead of turning to other hardware stores for price comparisons, they went to other area bike shops to see how they stood up against the competition in the bike niche. So as you can see here, Kyla Dixon, the assistant manager there, said, we looked at what others in the area were selling bikes for, so we could offer items at a competitive price. This is a great thing to do because not only are you competing with other hardware stores when you bring in a new niche, you're also now competing with other niche retailers who have that kind of item in their store. So just taking the time to kind of get out and explore the other competition is a great way to make sure that you're priced where you need to be. Kyla said that right now, they've gotten really positive feedback because they've done this, and customers now say that they have been selling things at a reasonable price. So they did that really well. They also, when they're talking to their customers, they kind of always spread the word that they participate in other community events. Old School Hardware is across the street from a local farmer's market, and once a month they set up a booth and pass out some bike safety prescription checklists that include some common items you need when repairing a bike. So then customers who bring that in can bring in the checklist back into the store to buy some parts, can get a discount on their purchase. That is a great promotion that you could easily incorporate into your store by participating in a local community event or having a special event to raise awareness of your niche, which we'll talk about here in just a few minutes. But there's just another great promotion to raise awareness. And also, we can't stress enough being active on social media. It's not just enough to just have a Facebook page or a Twitter account. Just interacting with customers is what helps Old School Hardware connect to make sure that they are kind of reaching the audience that they want to get into their stores. Jumping off from our last example, this next tip is really important. You may be crazy about bringing in an unconventional niche, and your customers may love it, but your staff may not know anything about the crazy item that you want to bring in the store. So training your team and teaching them about the new niche that you bring into the store is vital. Keep in mind that some staff may need to be trained to really make your new niche a success. And it's also really important if you want to sell these items in your store, your employees really need to know what it is that they're selling so that they can encourage customers to be as excited about the products as you are. One store that has done this really well is Orm Hardware in Eastern Ohio. The owner there, Dick McCoy, said training is essential. He has a beekeeping niche in one location and a beer and winemaking niche in a couple of other locations. So very specialized niches that will require some training. In his beer and winemaking supplies niche, he includes everything from kits to corks, in-home brewing kits, chemicals. He also has some of the professional equipment that are used to make these items, like crushers and pressers and filters and destemmers. He trains his staff on how to use these, and also allows his customers to rent these higher end equipment, pieces of equipment, so that they can, if they're really serious about the hobby, can consider purchasing it, but is aware that not everyone who is a beer and winemaking hobbyist is going to want to buy something like that. So just having that equipment available has been really helpful. And also just to cater to gift givers and wine and beer making enthusiasts, he also recently branched out and talked to some of the local vineyards and saw that they weren't carrying any giftware items. So that's really just kind of opened up a whole new segment for him as well. Just going along again with that training, all employees are required to bottle wine at the store, so they can tell customers how it's worked for them. That's just a natural extension of what a lot of your staff members are doing already. Just having that testimonial to say, yes, this is a product that I would recommend, is really going to gain trust between customers and employees in your store, and ultimately just keep customers coming back to you as the go-to source for that specialty item. And then you can see here with the beekeeping niche at one of this chain's locations, that niche is also growing just because 2 of the store's employees are members of a beekeepers association. And while we can't necessarily recommend that your employees join the organization, professional organization for a specialty niche, it might not be a bad idea to just consider. But above all, what McCoy attributes the success in his store's niches are just continued employee education and to help staff members with specialized interests kind of help take the lead in those niche categories. We've been talking about this next step a lot throughout the webcast, but it's really important to keep in mind as an independent retailer, giving back to the community is something that is likely important to you and is really where you can stand out from your big box competition and other kind of department stores in your area. So one creative promotion you can do to really take advantage of that is to introduce your niche at a local community event. Or if you don't have any local events where your niches would make sense or be a good fit, you can create your own. Special events drive traffic, as you know, and just introduce new customers to your offerings. For this niche, we looked to, for this tip rather, we looked to Zanella Milling Company in West Sunbury, Pennsylvania. It's a family-owned company that works to tie in local events to boost the sales of their niches. They have employees who participate in the county's annual farm tour, which begins at the store's mill, where they make their own buckwheat flour, cornmeal, whole wheat flour, and pancake mix. So they also offer pancake samples made from the store's products as a church fundraiser. And John Zanella can attest to that, as you can see. Community events, he says, are a great way to show off our products, and we get other vendors to participate, which is another great idea that you can keep in mind when bringing in new niches to your store. You don't always necessarily just have to sell to your consumer customers. You can maybe also look to other businesses in the community if you handcraft something or you grow something that you want to sell to other stores that they can in turn sell in their stores. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. The Zanilla family does this. And they sell their items to local grocery stores, retail stores, and area farmers markets and other businesses. So it's just another great way to connect with the community. Okay, so we've seen some pretty innovative niches so far in the presentation, but just to wrap things up, I wanted to just show you some of these other niches, some of these other stores that we came across in our research to give you some creative niche inspiration and just see how they're incorporating those niches in their store. So you can see here in the photos that on the left is Poplar Grove Pro Hardware. They specialize in paper goods, as you can see, which would be a great niche to start out in. And they also sell pet supplies, which is a big category right now. Another popular niche going along with the farm and pet, you can see here in Laurel Farm Supply Farm Mart in Bellingham, Washington, Western boots might be another avenue for you to try. We also looked into Simpson Ace Hardware in Sumter, South Carolina. They have a full gift shop and a lettering shop for sporting uniform customization. And over in Houston at Barings Home Center, they have created a bridal gift registry and sell stationery, baby clothes, and premium coffees in addition to just traditional hardware supplies. And just because it's a niche doesn't mean that it has to necessarily be an item. Over in San Francisco, Bill's Ace Hardware, as you can see on the left, is kind of taking a specialty in renting out chairs and just items for special events. So not necessarily selling a niche, but just having a rental department in a unique niche is a way to go. Or just to cater to the children who are coming in with their parents to your store. Maybe try something like toys, just like Burns Feed Farm Mart did in Gresham, Oregon. They have really benefited from having a Webkinz toys niche. As you can see here, the sales have been doing really well. Like we said earlier, sometimes making something, if you are a woodworker, this might be a good example for you. Yoder's Shipshawana Hardware in Shipshawana, Indiana has their own handcrafted Amish goods. And then finally, Ben's Super Center, we looked at in Brown City, Michigan, specializes in recreational trailers. Thank you so much for joining me for today's webcast. We had a lot of fun putting together the slides here in the presentation, and we hope you enjoyed it as well. Of course, if you have any questions about anything mentioned in this presentation, you can always feel free to contact me at amandaj@nrha.org. I'd also encourage you to visit nrha.org to check out the latest digital edition of Hardware Retailing, where we have a special feature on unique niches, and you can learn more about some of the retailers we mentioned in today's presentation. I hope it was as insightful for you as it was for us. I know we had a lot of fun with it, and we hope you did too. So thank you so much.